All right, my name is Mr. Schulman, and I am going to spend a few minutes telling you what I think are the most important keys to help you write a perfect or near perfect free response question for the AP United States Government and Politics exam. Here we go. All right, here's an example of an FRQ from a released exam from the College Board. You'll notice that up here you have a couple sentences like the stimulus giving you information that's not controversial, factual information, and you'll notice how the question's broken down into numbers. All right, almost like little questions, kind of like short answer questions. And you'll notice that for each question they have a task verb, for instance, describe or explain. And the other important thing you want to look at is how sometimes it's asking for you to do two things, one thing. Here you have two different bullet points. They want you to explain each. There are lots of mini questions in this one free response question. Really important for you to understand. Here's another example of an FRQ, and you'll notice the format down here is very similar. You have the stimulus with 4 sub-questions with letters, but up here you have data. And when you take the real AP US exam in May, you will likely have one FRQ that incorporates data, a political cartoon. Usually it's some type of data. And for data FRQs, there are a couple extra things I will show you in the coming moments. All right, before you write, the most important thing I recommend before you write anything is to read the question literally for 3 to 5 minutes. Just read it over again, read it 5 times, read it 20 times. After you've read it, go ahead and circle the task verbs. Describe, explain, define, compare. Circle those. If you see any number words, like I mentioned before, if it asks you to define one or to define both or to do two, put a box around those. That's important as well. And another important strategy I recommend is when you're completing each task, mark it off next to the question. So it gives you a visual idea of how many tasks you have left, how many tasks you have completed while you write. All right. Answer the FRQ using bullet points. Don't use letters. Always connect your answer to the vocabulary of the question. If the question is talking about political party polarization, your answer should incorporate those words if you want to get a good score. Be explicit in your writing. If you're one of my students, you know I say this all the time. Be specific. Pretend like the person you're writing for is really, really dumb. They have no idea. You want to make all of the connections for them. Do not assume the person reading your essay knows anything. If the FRQ refers to data, like I showed you previously, it's really important that when you're discussing this data, you want to reference specific data points in your response. For example, if you're about to show the trend or some type of pattern in data, you want to specifically reference, for example, in 1976, the president had a popularity rating of 20%, and that increased when it reached to 1980 when the popularity was 78%. You want to show very specific data points. Many other AP teachers recommend this. I recommend this too, especially as someone who's been an FRQ scorer for the College Board. Adding spare tires is a great way to help your answer. You cannot lose points on an FRQ. Therefore, adding extra examples, adding extra information can only help you. However, if you contradict yourself, that can hurt you. The last thing I want to go over are what it means to perform the task verbs. Starting at the top, very simple. When it asks you to list or identify something, literally just write it down, answer the question, boom, point. If a task asks you to either define or describe, you'll notice that the way I recommend you answer a define or describe task is exactly the same. Put down at least 2 sentences. Your first sentence should provide an explicit meaning of the concept. Your second sentence should provide a specific detailed example showing the concept. Your details can be real, something maybe you've learned from history or something in current events, or if you want to use a hypothetical example, that is fine as well. Remember, this is for define, this is for describe. Notice that it says to write at least 2 sentences. Always write a little bit more. Writing more can help you. It can't hurt you. The most common FRQ task verb that you will see is the dreaded explain task. If you know how to do an explain task, you'll be fine. The first sentence I recommend, put the meaning of the concept or concepts in the question. The second thing I would do is, after you introduce that you know what the concepts are, you want to provide statements that describe a set of facts, and you want to show the causes and effects as related to the FRQ. Alright, so for example, if a question's asking you to explain the reasons why James Madison was fearful of factions, okay? You want to define factions. You want to tell, well, James Madison was really scared of factions because he felt factions could potentially tear apart the country. Because of his fear of factions, James Madison fought for the Constitution to include checks and balances, federalism, in order to prevent factions from destroying the country. And then you want to give more examples of how these checks and balances, these federalism principles helped Madison, get his point across. You'll notice in the way I said it, very explicit, very specific, very important you do that. And once again, it's important to include an example. Sometimes you'll see a compare question or compare task. Here you also want to write at least 3 sentences. Your first sentence should provide the meanings of any concepts. Your second sentence should describe any similarities between the concepts. And then your third sentence should specifically describe any differences. So if the question's asking you to compare the goals of political parties and political interest groups, you should define them, you should show how they're similar, you should show how both parties and interest groups are different. If you can follow these recommendations, I promise you that you will do really well, not only on our exams we take in class, but the AP exam you'll take in May. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to me, email me, or even send me a tweet. Good luck.